Can I tell you a story? It's a story about where Fascination Film Studio got started and why I decided to do this, why I decided to, quit my corporate job and do nothing but tell stories about people's lives. And it started because my dad died, and you're going through all their stuff, I was in the attic with my brother and going through things, and I found this white box, like a banker's box, and I opened it, and inside were these African artifacts. And it took me a minute, and I realized I know what these are. We have an aunt and uncle. To me, it'd probably be a great aunt and uncle, maybe even a great great aunt and uncle. And they were missionaries in Africa. And these are from them. These are from their time in Africa. What were their names? What were their names? I could not remember their names. And I couldn't ask my dad. And he was the youngest of 3 brothers, so couldn't ask my uncles either. And it planted a seed of regret in me, because I know I knew their names. And then, we're going through things and pictures and all those things, and you find these photos and you're like, is this them? And you have these questions like, Africa's big. What African nation were they ministering in? And deeper questions like, were they the good guys? Or were they some kind of colonialists or something? I don't know. And I can't know. And I wish I did know. And if my dad was around, he probably knew. I could have asked him, but he's not. And I was one of those kids who was like in 6th grade and had a VHS camcorder, and I was making movies, and I have been a storyteller and a recorder of things all my life. And why didn't I record this? I just didn't think to. I didn't know to. Nobody urged me to. And I thought I'd remember, and I didn't. So anyway, that planted a seed. And then, we're going through things, and see, on my other side of the family, on my mom's side of the family, my great-grandmother got to Iowa in a covered wagon. And my great-grandmother is somebody I did know. I knew her all my life, until I was 20 years old. She passed away when I was in college. But for the last years of her life, she was had in a care center and had dementia. So that's different. But like for, my elementary school years and maybe my junior high years, I really knew this lady. I knew a lady. I know someone who came here in a covered wagon. And the reason she was coming to Iowa in a covered wagon is that her mother had died in childbirth. And so then her grieving father put his kids in this covered wagon, and he was coming to Iowa from South Dakota to be near his parents to help raise these kids. This is like the turn of the century. This is like the 1910s or so, So like men didn't probably raise kids much in those days, and he probably wanted help to do that. And so he's coming back to Iowa, and along the journey, their wagon is struck by lightning. And her siblings on either side of her are killed. But she lived. And one result of her living is that I live. And it's just such an unbelievable story. And so then as I'm going through things, I find this. I find this little diary. And this is the diary of her life. Mama started this life in Watertown, South Dakota on August 28th, 1904. There's a lot we don't know about her beginnings. She says she's the only one who had a doctor present when she was born. She had a sister Mabel, and it goes on, and it records her story. And I thought, I'm recording this. I'm going to make a a movie about this. Not that I'd ever like make it big in Hollywood or something, or that I have any illusions that this would somehow be like a major motion picture one day. But for the sake of my family, for the sake of my kids, I want to record this. And and I think there's purpose in that. I think there's purpose in that because through no fault of their own, my kids have no idea the sacrifice that was made for them to have the extraordinarily comfortable life that they have. So like my great-grandmother, when she was a kid, the life she knew as a kid is so far from the life my kids will know. It's just so different. Like through no fault of hers or no fault of theirs. And if we made a Venn diagram of our lives, my circle overlaps hers and my circle overlaps theirs, but they'll never know her. But I knew her and I know them. So I have the opportunity to be the bridge of information. So like when she was a little kid, she probably had like this much flour each day to eat, like this much oats or something and beans or something in this covered wagon. That's what she had. My kids will throw a fit if I buy the wrong brand of chicken nuggets. It's not their fault. They've been born into extraordinary excess. Like these supermarkets that are just filled with abundance of everything, including choice, and it's everywhere. And the concern I have is that there's perhaps a loss of grit. So like survival was success for my great-grandmother, who I knew, who came here in a covered wagon. And as a result, she had a lot of grit. And as a result of that, my grandmother, who grew up on a Depression-era farm, she had a lot of grit. And she's a hero to me, a legend to me. And then my mom, because she was raised by that woman, and the circumstances of their life, she also had some grit to her, but she had an increased amount of comfort because of the technology of the day, of the 60s, and how things became increasingly comfortable. And then as an adult, raising her kids in the 80s when there's more and more comfort. And we had things like climate control and an abundance of food, and just all of our material needs were met and met excessively. So I've got some grit, but I was born into comfort. And then my kids are born into even more comfort. And as we start to go through the generations, what we're seeing, and I don't think this is the complete reason or purpose for this, but we do see like an epidemic of anxiety. And in some ways, it's because we're losing an understanding of what people went through for us to have what we do now. And I'm not saying that anxiety is strictly a result of not understanding our history and what people went through, but I would suspect that it's a contributing factor, which gets us a little off track. But it is to say that as I started caring about telling her story for the sake of my kids, I became incredibly passionate about this idea that legacy matters, that our heritage matters. Our heritage and our legacy are so important, and I feel that as much as I had success selling fishing lures or making fishing stores or doing any of the other things I've done in my career, what I'm really, really passionate about is people and story and being a storyteller. And I thought, as I got into this, I thought, this is all I want to do. This is all I'm going to do. This is exactly what I was made to do, is to make films like this. And so I've started making these films. And as I make these films, it only reinforces more and more. This is what I'm here for, at least for this time, at least for this season of my life. And I can't wait to be done with this story, but I'm not rushing it. There's only so much time on the one hand, but I want to take my time because I want to tell it right. And in the meantime, there's so many stories to tell. As I've been working on films, what I discover is behind every single door is a fascinating story. And I just want to tell them. Maybe I'll get to help tell yours.